Business Connections Live, the UK's leading online business channel. This is Business Connections Live with Steve Hyland.
Well, howdy doody do. Hello and welcome to Business Connections Live, the program for entrepreneurs, SMEs and also business owners. Now on the show, we've got a cracking one lined up for you today. We're going to be discussing how to get your sales team to perform. Actually, that's me just taking the mickey. But how do you get your sales team to perform? How do you get them out there? How do you make certain that they're using the right techniques to increase sales for your business? Let's face it, the cornerstone of all businesses is going to be sales. A friend of the program joins me today to explain all. His name is Paul Glynn, and Paul is from Sandler West M25. It's going to be a cracking show today. I love having you on the program because you always make me feel marginally uncomfortable.
Really?
Yeah.
Goodness me, I'm the one who's nervous.
No, you should never be nervous. Paul, for those people that don't know anything about you, when was the last time you were on?
Oh, I don't know, about a year ago?
About a year ago.
Something like that, yeah.
Who's Paul Glynn and who is Sandler West M25? Who's Sandler as well? So first of all, who are you?
Right, I've been looking after this particular franchise for 8 years. I'm the managing director of my own franchise, which basically means I am part of a big network, but at the same time I'm very jealously looking after my clients at the same time. So it's up to me to get my clients. So I'm actually my own sales team as well as my own training team as well. So that's who I guess I am. My background has been in sales pretty much all my life, as I was explaining, either in advertising sales or even going back further into financial sales as well. So I've learned how to do it the hard way. And
then you found Sandler. Now tell us a bit about Sandler, because as you said, it's a franchise, but what is it a franchise for?
Basically, Sandler in itself is a proprietary selling system process. David H. Sandler, way back in the 1970s, was a not particularly well-performing salesperson who got fed up with working so hard and trying to figure out how could he actually get the prospect to do most of the work. So he looked at human psychology and NLP, your favourite, and tried to put something together and found that it worked to such a degree that it's now become a well-known system across the world. We've been here in the UK for like 12 years, but we've got 24 here in the UK and something like 260, I think it is, across the whole world. So we operate in a number of countries across the world.
We were talking before we came on air, there are so many different things and so many different ways that people get it very wrong. We ourselves are often in the sales environment. There is this tendency, and maybe it's a British thing, but there is a tendency to go in there and to not let the client talk. You go in and you go, let me tell you a little bit about myself before we get going. To nearly solidify in the prospect's mind that you're worth talking to. And that's never been the way that you approach it, is it?
No. In fact, if anything, we would say that if you say, let me tell you how I can help you, it's automatically critical. As a critical parent, it's basically suggesting, let me tell you how you've been doing it wrong up until now.
And that is the issue, isn't it?
Well, yes, exactly. So at the end of the day, it's very arrogant of us to be able to suggest that we know how they can run their business any better. Even the bit that we know well is for us to work out what is the actual problem. And quite often the prospect, the client, doesn't actually know what the problem is. That's where our expertise often lies, in trying to help our potential client actually understand what the problem actually is. And only then can we start talking about a solution.
Is it wood from the trees, do you think, a little bit? That when you're standing there, they have so much information, they probably do actually know what the problem is, but they just can't see it?
Yes, quite often. In fact, these days, more and more, they've done an awful lot of research before you've even turned up. The salesperson is no longer the fount of information. The salesperson really should be trying to identify with the prospect what the real problem is, the underlying issues, to get that clarified, and then being able to co-create a solution. And then if we've co-created a solution, it's very, very easy for that client or person to then buy that solution because it's theirs.
Makes sense. Listen, what we're going to do, we're going to take you on a bit of a journey today. If you're having issues within your business, and I think this applies to even one-man bands, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah,
it's
sure.
from one-man bands upwards, regardless of the size of your organisation or your business. If you find the sales element maybe the most tricky, then hopefully today's program is going to help you. We're going to be looking at a number of different areas, people, your sales team not to be held accountable, how to be properly supported, how to actually do the process of going out there and doing the sale, what to do when you're there. And let's just kick off at the first one in many ways. If your team are not performing, it can only be from one or of a number of different combinations. So where do we kick off then when it comes to talking about sales?
Well, certainly if you're talking about looking at your sales team performing or not performing, you're quite right. It's got to be logically a combination of either you don't have the right people doing it, or they don't know what to do, or they don't know how to do that thing, or then perhaps we're not supporting them correctly, or then holding them accountable to the things we've actually agreed to. If you think about it logically, it's got to be one of those things.
So what should the owner of a business be looking for then in that, because that's something they're not going to identify without talking to you, is it?
I don't know. I think a lot of people realise that there's something going wrong, but as you say, it's not entirely clear where it's going wrong. I think, for example, going right back to hiring a salesperson, if we hire a salesperson, we assume that person can sell. I mean, that's a fairly reasonable assumption. So that's it. You hire somebody and away they go, and there shouldn't be an issue. Why do we even have to have a discussion about it? If they're not performing, it must be because they're lazy, right?
Yes, right.
But no.
But no.
But no, because that doesn't make sense if you think about it, because why would a salesperson, if their whole livelihood is dependent upon performing well to get commission and bonus and all that good stuff and keep their job, they're not going to be lazy, generally speaking, they're not. So there's got to be something behind that. If they're not performing, there's going to be other issues behind that. And it could be that we've got the wrong person in the role to start off with.
When you go in, you see a business and you're talking to them, do you sometimes see very capable salespeople whose technique is just wrong? So that's where it's just not working for them. Maybe perhaps been lucky in the past, landed a few contracts, maybe just through persistence. You were saying to me before we started, you're averaging about 120 calls a week. Mm-hmm. So you are proactively working on your sales calls and your techniques. And you'll probably get salespeople who are doing exactly the same kind of figures but getting no success.
Yes.
Is there fundamentally one mistake, do you think, they're making?
Well, the salespeople mistake they're making. I think the main thing is trying to spend too much time talking about what it is that we can actually do, rather than finding out what the issues really are. Because at the end of the day, people really don't care about our product or service. They only care what it is that we can do for them, and what's in it for them. What kind of solution can we bring?
But when you say that to a CEO or to a managing director or to the sales director, what kind of response do you get when you say that to them?
Well, I typically wouldn't say that to them, because I need them to come to that conclusion on their own. I have to gently take them there and say, well, okay, what is the issue? And first of all, have we got the right people doing the job? Because as you say, I mean, it could well be that they've just been very, very lucky in their previous role. They've done some good stuff. They've chanced their arm, and then they're now selling for your business. But it doesn't make much sense. I mean, would you really put all the potential future of your business in the hands of somebody who's chancing their arm, who just happened to get lucky doing some sales in the past?
But
we've got no idea whether they're going to be any good in this particular role that you're giving them. I mean,
but the trouble is, if you're a business owner, how do you interview that salesperson when they come in? How do you interview? How do you find that out? You can only go on past results and whether they were successful in their previous role, whether they were hitting the targets that were set for them. How do you identify the one that's actually got that little something, that little bit different?
Well, we can look at their skill sets, as you say, their experience and their results and the attitude and the cognitive habits they've got and the cognitive skills they've got. Yes, we can look at all of those things, but you're quite right. But they can still be quite convincing and actually even believe it in an interview situation. So we would actually say, well, actually, there's no guarantee, but you need to give yourself as big a chance of getting it right as possible. And therefore, there's two things to bear in mind. One, they are trying to figure it out with you, and there's no certificate, there's no exam in sales, there's no professional qualification as such in sales, so there's nothing to hang it on. They're trying to work out with you how they're going to make a success with you. No, hang on, let's go back a stage. If you were setting out in business all over again, and you need to find somebody to be your partner to bring in revenue, and in fact he's going to be your partner, and you're going to rely upon that person to bring in the revenue, how rigorous would you be about interviewing that person? How much time would you spend? What would you actually do to go about to make sure you got the right person and reduce the risk as much as possible?
So where does the mistake lie, Paul?
Well, the fact that we assume that if we get a salesperson in for interview, that they can sell your particular thing. I mean, that's not necessarily the case. So we have to look at things like psychometric assessments. We need to get under the skin of it as well. So we've got to give ourselves and the salesperson as much potential to actually make this thing work. But we have to bear in mind, it's not like hiring an accountant or an engineer it's quite different. It's much more a people to people experience, and they're trying to work it out with you as to how they're going to make it work as much as you need them to work it out. So it's much more a partnership when it comes to a sales situation.
All right, no.
So in a way, it should be, like hiring a block of person, like an accountant. That's it. He's got his qualifications. He does the work. Done. But it's not like that with sales, unfortunately.
And the trouble with sales, of course, is that there really aren't any qualifications, are there, out there? It is expertise, experience, and yet probably one of the most important jobs inside any business. But
then you've got to bear in mind that certainly with small businesses, who is typically the salesperson? The real small businesses, who is the salesperson?
Normally the managing director.
Or indeed the owner of the business, the founder. Business. So we have to be as difficult, as precise about those same questions with that person, with themselves if you like, as they would with a salesperson. Is he the right person to be selling? And usually the answer is no.
Is he the right person to be selling? And normally the right answer, or the wrong answer perhaps, is no. Paul Glynn's my guest today on Business Connections Live. We're talking about everything sales on today's programme. More from Paul in just a few moments' time. Well, you're watching Business Connections Live. We're live on a Monday. It's great to have your company. Of course, we're live on YouTube and live on Facebook Live as well, for that matter. If you are watching, please don't sit there thinking to yourself that you can't leave a comment. If you've got a question for Paul, perhaps, all you got to do, you can DM us on Twitter. See, I'm down with the kids. I understand about all these things. Just get in touch with us and you'll be able to get your question answered. I think sales is such a difficult area to talk about. Fundamentally, it should be very, very simple. But we maybe sometimes surround it with this kind of mystique, this little bit of magic. And I think sometimes that's perpetrated as well by the salespeople that you employ, because I think to a certain extent many salespeople are showmen in the way that they present, the way they sell, and I think that carries on. There was a wonderful program on the TV a little while back called, was it White Gold, where it was looking back at the 1970s, 1980s for the early days of double glazing. Really, really interesting insight into that slick sales patter, nearly pressurized selling. That's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about taking a considered view, a considered opinion on how you should be increasing your sales. Okay, I'll tell you what we're going to do. Going hand in hand with sales, of course, is always the whole world of marketing. Grant LeBoff from Sticky Marketing Club, he was on the program last week. A really cracking show with him. We thoroughly enjoyed it. He was talking about effective marketing in a digital world. If you missed the program, it was a really, really good show. And just to give you a bit of a taster, here's what happened on last week's edition of Business Connections Live. Now, on today's show, we're going to be discussing effective marketing in a digital world. Joining me in the studio today is Grant LeBoff. He's from Sticky Marketing Club.
I'm a speaker, I'm a writer, And these days I spend most of my time doing strategic consultancy work, so working with businesses to help them understand how they should position themselves, how to be more competitive, which channels to market they should use, branding, all the really important strategic marketing disciplines. Not one piece of advice, but one question. And actually that question becomes quite difficult to answer for a lot of businesses, which is, do you truly understand who your customer is? So let's say, oh, to be successful, I need 50 customers, and I work in this area, and that's only 2% of the market, or 0.5% of the market. So it's drilling down to truly identify and understand the customer that you want as your customer, and then you work to build that particular audience. And then people say, well, you know, most marketing fails. Well, of course it fails. You've set yourself up to fail. You know, so it's about understanding what's realistic. What are the resources I've got? All of this matters to be effective. It's because if you think about what marketing was, marketing used to be the art of interrupting someone else's audience. But if you think about modern marketing in terms of modern digital channels, a Facebook page, a YouTube channel, a website, none of those have an audience. If you've got a page on Facebook, once I've been, what's going to keep me coming back? Because it's different from I pick up the magazine and I'm going to buy the magazine next month, not because of your advert, which might be the same, but because the magazine changes. So it's someone else's audience. So what we say is today, marketing is no longer about interrupting someone else's audience. It's about building your own and then retaining it. We talk about engagement. That's the real measure. And what do we mean by engagement? Why is it traditionally before you got married, you'd get engaged? Because engaged means busy, taken, or occupied. And so what you want to say is, how often am I keeping my audience busy, taken, or occupied with me? What's the purpose of marketing? What's the reason we're going to market? It's because when someone's in the market for the products or services that we offer, we want a seat at the table. So I would say a big part of marketing and comms today is to build that audience, to win the attention of an audience, and different people within that audience, but as you build it, to retain that. Because once you've retained that attention, when someone's ready to buy, oh yeah, I remember them, let's try them. Doesn't guarantee the business, there's a sales bit to do as well, but at least it gives you a seat at the table. Most people focus on what they do, and the unique selling proposition was always about what you did. So it was actually invented in the 1950s in Madison Avenue in Advertising Row in New York, and it was specifically invented for the idea of TV advertising, where you were gonna, if I say shout, at your audience or your prospects for 30, 40 seconds at a time, you've got to have something that's unique that will attract customers to you. Because if you're in services today, and let's face it, the majority of businesses almost by definition are, if you're in services today, there is nothing that you can promise about what you do that can't be copied by someone else. Two things about a USP. The first word is unique. And you can't be quite unique or almost unique. You're either unique or you're not. Unique means you're the only one. And then the selling proposition part is, it's not just that you've got to be unique, it's got to be something that would actually attract customers to you. So you could be the only accountant in the UK with a wooden leg. That might make you unique, but it's not a selling proposition. But you don't differentiate by what you do most of the time. There's always going to be an exception, by the way. You differentiate by how you do it and who you do it for. So if you understand who you do it for, you then create an amazing how for that who, and that's what differentiates the business. Yeah, so I'm Grant Leboff from Sticky Marketing Club. What I would say is understand today as a business owner, you own media channels, your website, your blog, your YouTube, your Facebook, your LinkedIn, and that means you have to create great content because that's the currency of media, and the opportunity for you is to build an audience and retain that audience with that content, so when they're ready to buy, you are front of mind and you get a seat at the table. And that's what marketing is all about, is to create opportunities for your business so you can sell and be
fantastic show. Grant LaBeouf there. It was a fantastic program. Sticky Marketing. If you get a chance, do watch the entire show. If you're thinking about how do I get out there, how do I advertise my brand, how do I go about doing that, he gave some fantastic advice. Good advice today, incidentally, and we'll be going on and talking to Paul Glynn in just a moment. Don't forget, if you think the programs are good and you're enjoying them, there's over 200 hours worth of programs on our website at Business Connections Live. If you'd like a program like this one for your own organization, maybe you're thinking to yourself, do you know, this would be a great way to actually get out to my customer base, or maybe a great way to communicate with my global workforce, or even just your UK workforce, and you're thinking, you know, a program like this, it means I could bring the CEO, the managing director in, I could bring head of pensions in, or whatever, sit them down and let people actually hear their voices, get to know them, see what their personality is about. There is a problem sometimes when you have remote workforces that what they're doing is that they're making up their own story in their own head. If you've got a workforce that's out there in the field at the moment, they think that you get up in the morning to annoy them. And that's not the case. You're getting up, you're trying to run a business. So what better way of telling them by having a program just like this one? If you'd like to find out more details, all you've got to do is contact us here at Business Connections Live. It's that easy. You can drop us an email to studio@businessconnectionslive.com. If you wish, you can also give us a call. In fact, a telephone call is probably even better. There is nothing that annoys me more in this world than people that will have endless streams of emails going backwards and forwards. Text messages, what's that all about then? You can have, why make a whole conversation last an hour with texting backwards and forwards when one phone call that takes 30 seconds will do it like that? What's that all about then? Anyway, if you want to give us a call, 01784 256 777 is our telephone number. Don't forget as well, what else have we got for you? We got, oh yes, you can follow us on Twitter. Get our stream of consciousness at BCL Business TV. You can also watch the programs live on our Facebook page too. We're also on LinkedIn for that matter. We're all over the place. But the best place to go to find out more about Business Connections Live is on our website at businessconnectionslive.com. And the reason that's a good place is that if you want business information that's going to help your business, that's going to help your business grow to be successful, everything from marketing through to sales technique to fundraising, one receptacle, one place, one silo where you can sit there and you can hear experts. It's like having a new consultant come to your business each and every day. Over 200 hours worth of content is there. So just go along to the website, businessconnectionslive.com. Now on today's show, we're discussing how to get your sales team to perform more effectively out there. My guest in the studio today is Paul Glynn, and Paul is from Sandler West M25. Okay, Paul, I can see you're waiting, you're ready. Sales. We employ our salesperson. What if they don't know what to do, Paul? How do we identify that, and then what do we do about it?
Good question. I think, in theory, we'd assume that the salesperson will know what to do. After all, we've hired him as a salesperson. But typically, we have to have a very clear idea as to what it is that we're actually wanting the targets to be, what it is that where do we expect the business to even come from? And sometimes that's not even clear. I mean, what percentage would we expect our business to be from, say, renewals, or would it be new business, and what kind of new business? What is our ideal client? What kind of products are we actually trying to get people to take up from us? Is there a new service that we need to be looking at? Loads and loads of questions which in theory we should have very, very clear, and quite often we don't. And then we're wondering why it is our salespeople are out there selling something completely and utterly different. Well, the answer is they're out there selling whatever it is that's easiest to sell, because obviously their number one problem is making sure they're making enough revenue to hit the targets that have been set, and commission and bonus and all the rest of it. So we can't really have a go at them for doing something that we didn't tell them they couldn't do. So we have to be very, very clear that we've actually got a process for them to be following, and they know what that process is going to be, and what the targets are and what the goals are. For example, I was talking to a client of mine recently. I said, okay, so what are the goals for next year? And they said, well, it's going to be a percentage increase on previous year. I said, okay, that's fine, but how is that going to be made up? How much of that is going to be new business, and how much is that to renewals? And they said, We don't know. It's just 10% more than this last. Okay, fine. Okay. So what's the conversion rate at least? I mean, so we know what it is that our salespeople are supposed to be doing. So you want me to help you get your people to be doing this. What's the conversion rate? And they went, not tracking that. So, what do you mean not tracking that? How can we know what it is? How can the salesperson know what it is they're supposed to be doing? How can you be operating a business like that? But they have been, and they are doing. They're doing absolutely fantastically. So it is possible to actually go in blind and do that. A lot of businesses do. But it's very, very hard then to hold our salesperson for doing things if we don't know what it is that they're supposed to be doing.
Is that why? Do you think that's why we see quite a high transient population in sales jobs? People moving from until they find a job that suits them, their skills, the product is right for their individual style. Is that why we see that kind of transient movement of salespeople?
I think actually, jumping forward, I think it's more than that. I think it's if we are properly supporting that salesperson, if for example, in the end they are a partner in making this business thrive, and there's real career progression involved, and there's real ability to get their needs met, then there's no real need to move quite so quickly. But the thing is, of course, that all the time that it's very, very cloudy on all sides, it does mean the salesperson can get away with not doing an awful lot that they should be doing. So, I mean, if you've got a sales cycle that's, say, 2 years long, and you don't actually know what the outcome's going to be of their sales process that they're doing now until 2 years' time, there's loads of place to hide in the meantime.
That's a worry, isn't it?
Well, right. So therefore, if that's the case, then we shouldn't be managing the results. We can't manage the results. We cannot control what our client is or isn't going to do. So therefore, how can we be looking too closely at what those results are going to be? We've no idea at this stage what those results are going to be. The only thing we can control is what their behaviour is, what the salesperson's behaviour is now.
But that is the issue, though, isn't it, with sales in general? If I employ an electronics development engineer,
right,
the task I will give him will be, regardless of how you look at it, but it's 1 + 1 =
Yes.
2.
Correct.
You'll be putting circuits together or whatever, but those building blocks are definitive.
Yes.
Whereas with sales, there's something that's nearly, I hesitate using the word, but it's airy-fairy nearly, isn't it? You don't know how somebody, that interaction, you could well go in and talk to somebody and present exactly the same presentation.
Yes.
And one you'll get the order, and the next one you won't.
Yes.
So it isn't that kind of definitive positives all the time.
But then, it's very interesting what you're talking about. You know, if we were to go in and do that presentation at one place and then another, we're going to get a completely different result. The reason is because we haven't actually discovered what the pain is. So what is right presentation for one person is not going to be right for presentation for another. But you know, I've been here before. I'm going to say, what do you mean present? I mean, presentation shouldn't be what closes things. The business should be closed before a presentation.
And this is a conversation that comes up with a lot of salespeople. That they think that a pitch, presentation, all of those things, that isn't really what they should be doing, is it?
Yeah, present, close. And we would say, no, close, present.
So what do you mean by that?
Well, unless we know that the potential client's actually going to do business with us, then we really shouldn't be doing them a quotation, for example, or a presentation until we know what they're going to do with that information, i.e. become a client. We're within 90% certain anyway.
So going back to where we started, is that fundamentally the biggest problem, that we're going to have people that are watching this who are in the sales role, and what they're finding they're doing, they're going out. Before we start, let me tell you a little bit about our business, our company. And really, they're starting at the wrong end.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yes. So, in other words, if our salesperson doesn't actually know what it is they're supposed to be doing, what process that they should be following, then they're not going to get that right. It's as simple as that. So we need to be very clear what it is, what process we need to be looking at, in the sense of, is it a complex sale, in which case it's going to take a number of different meetings with different people, and how close are we to actually getting that piece of business? Should we be going in right at the top, right from the beginning? Should we start in the middle and then work our way up? Who's actually involved in that decision cycle? All of those things. As you say, it's a very, very complex thing. In a way, it's very simple. Sales is very, very simple. But in other ways, it's not. It's not at all a straightforward black and white 1 + 1 = 2 sort of thing. And the reason is because we're dealing with people. It's all to do with human psychology, and people are complex.
Do you think a lot of salespeople don't really understand how to grow the revenue, how to actually do all these things? Is it an issue that the salespeople have, that they don't understand those processes?
Yes. And the reason why they don't understand those processes is because, well, where did they learn how to do those processes? They haven't been necessarily trained in any of those processes. Or if they have, it was a very, very long time ago, and they fall back into the old ways of, as you just said, let me show you what it is I can do, and hopefully what it is that I've got, you'll buy. It's very old-fashioned, very hard sell. However softly you say it, it's a hard sell. And that's what is happening out there again and again, and they don't know anything different. Hand
on heart, when you look at the people in the sales environment, we've got the Sandler technique, the Sandler way. Are there a number of core techniques that are out there, do you think? Are there a number of different processes that sales... I mean, we're not saying that one size fits all here, are we? But, it's a number of different processes. Or are all the processes just derivatives of one?
There are a number of different sales processes, but I think at the end of the day, all of them are going to be around basically the same thing. If you've got to properly qualify the prospect, qualify the opportunity fully before you actually then start talking about a solution. I mean, it's as soon as you say it like that, it's obvious, but it's a question of how do you do that? How do you go about doing that? And that's the other thing. So if we know what needs to be done, that's a question of then how are you going to do it? So we would say, well, the best way of doing that is to identify pain, and by pain we would say that's sufficient emotional reason to do business. If you got down to the core, so what, when it comes to the individual person.
But people do feel very uncomfortable doing that, don't they?
Oh yeah. It's much safer to just stay in the world of our stuff and our features and advantages and benefits, rather than really get under the skin of what's really going on and what the real pain is of the person we've got in front of us, because that would mean we can no longer be at an arm's length kind of transaction. So yes, a lot of salespeople will be very, very uncomfortable with even thinking like that. But if you think about it, if you go back to your really best sales, that's actually what happened. You really understood, you really got under the skin of the person and the problem and what it is you could do for them in a way that didn't happen on things that didn't end up being good sales. So what we would say is, in that case, well, systematize it. Do it deliberately get into pain, deliberately look at what they're prepared to do to fix it, and then deliberately spend some time working out how it is they can actually buy our stuff. And then we're going to be able to close business an awful lot more effectively.
When does the process start, do you think? Is the process starting the moment you pick the phone up on the cold call? Or are we in the process, or is it two different kind of processes going on here? One is to make the appointment to go see the client, but the bit we're talking about where you find out the pain and everything like that is in the meeting, the face-to-face meeting. Or are we doing all of this twice? Once on the cold call initially, and then in the meeting?
Absolutely, we would say so anyway, yes, definitely. We would try and get the prospect to identify what sort of pain they might actually have, rather than get into any sort of detailed conversation on the phone. We very quickly want to get to the point of saying something like, look, this obviously is important to you. This is not something we can discuss on the phone in any detail. Tell you what, how about you invite me to come and see you, and we see whether we can help or not. That's the way to close for the appointment. So that the pain starts right from the... In fact, even before you pick up the phone, work out what are the problems that you solve. In fact, this is a nice exercise to think about. My clients will back me up on this, because I get permission to get really cross with them, right, when I'm doing this bit of training. And so they know that I'm not really cross with them, right? But I am.
Yeah.
And I say to them, okay, a very simple question that you will get wrong, guaranteed. I say, oh, I'm not going to get this wrong. It's what problem do you solve? And they can't answer me, typically. They'll tell me everything that they do. They say, automation. Okay, but that's not a problem you solve. That's something you do. Compliance. So no, if compliance is okay, that's not a problem. What's the problem you solve? and they have real problems getting their heads around the fact that really and truly what they should be doing is identifying the problems they solve, and then they can get on the phone and start talking to potential clients and say, look, the kind of problems we solve are blah, blah, blah. I don't know, are those the sort of problems that you've got? Yeah. I don't know, is this something we need to discuss?
It's a very different approach, isn't it? Or is it a very different approach? It's not. It just seems to be more
really.
Common sense, actually.
Yeah, exactly, thank you. Yeah, in a way, that's what I'm saying. If you actually go back and look at the ones that worked, you were doing that anyway. We're just giving some real process around that and make it deliberate, make it really, really conscious. Because people don't care what you do or what it is you've got. They don't care. After all, there's loads of different suppliers like you to choose from. Why on earth should they choose you? The answer is they're only going to choose the person that they really trust, and the person they're going to trust is somebody that takes a real interest in them. And the only way to show real interest and trust in them is to take an interest in the problem that they've got. So
hold that thought. Taking an interest in the problems that your potential clients, customers will have. Are you asking the right questions when you pick the phone up to make that appointment? Are you asking the right questions? Are you... We hear this so much, and I don't want it to become a cliche, about the feeling the pain of the customer. But there is a real danger that could nearly become a cliche, couldn't it, in the sales environment, feeling the customer's pain?
No, I don't think so. I don't think it would do enough.
Just tell me to shut up then.
No.
More from him in just a moment, whoever he is. We'll be talking with Paul Glynn on this edition of Business Connections Live. More from Paul in just a few moments' time. Theda Gray joined us on the programme a little while back. She was from Oxford Innovations. We were talking about how to overcome obstacles to business growth. It was on Business Connections Live 143, and that went out last year on the 15th of August 2016. On that particular edition of Business Connections Live, we discussed businesses getting the right information to understand and manage risk within their business to achieve their desired outcome as a business owner and to give them the edge. Interestingly, I suppose, in many respects, is what we're talking about. Here's a quick update of what Theda said. Take us back to last year's edition of Business Connections Live.
Thank you. My name's Theda Gray from Oxford Innovation, OI Business Solutions. And the key takeaways I'd love for you to take away today are: step away from your business if you're an owner-managed business, and really make sure that you are achieving what you'd like to from your business. Please make sure you take the time to think about what you'd like to achieve and who is doing what in your business. Are your products and services working well, and what profitability are you making on those particular products and services? Know your stuff. Do you know what decisions you need to make and what information is relevant? Do you know your break-even point? Do you understand the key information that will help the livelihood and the strength of your business? So understanding your P&L and balance sheet, or getting someone to help you with that. And really knowing how to stretch your business. Get the most out of your business and your team. Get the help in that you need to make sure your staff are motivated and you're getting the help on the processes you need to hone in on. And enjoy working in your business, knowing that you're achieving the vision you're ultimately striving for.
Do you know, it's quite interesting, we look back at these programs, we get these little snippets, that one there from a year ago. And I think to myself, there is this huge receptacle of information that's just sitting there to be used. Some really great advice from all the guests that come on the programme. I think from my point of view, it sometimes feels like I've got a consultant that comes in every week to tell me on how I can grow my business. Surely you should be using that free resource exactly the same way within your business as well. Theda, fantastic hour, Oxford Innovation, interesting, informative, all the information that you need, like today's programme. You're watching Business Connections Live. On today's show, we're discussing how to get your sales team to perform. My guest in the studio today is Paul Glynn from Sandler West M25. Did I do it the right way around? I did, yeah. Mm-hmm. Sandler West M25. And just to remind people, how would you describe yourself? You are a sales coach?
Gosh, oh dear, don't want to put myself in a box too much. No,
not we, I.
Okay, me.
I'm looking for me.
Paul Glynn, right, I am a sales trainer, coach and mentor.
Lovely. Okay, let's get back to the nitty-gritty. We've been talking about the fact that we've got our sales team out there. We think we've got somebody who is not bad, who does feel the pain of the customer.
Yep.
We've identified within our business as well, for that matter, actually the problems that we resolve.
Right.
So when we're talking now to our customers, we can say, yep, if you've got that problem, we can fix it. How do we go about then supporting our sales team properly? I mean, what tools can we give them? What help can we give them when they're out there? A lot of companies, I would imagine, what they do, they will take their sales team on board because they feel they have the expertise and the success previously. They will just cast them adrift and say, get on with it.
Well, yeah, exactly. And in many ways, you'd kind of expect that, wouldn't you? I mean, if you take on any other professional, that's exactly what you would expect. But really and truly, what ideally you want is to be supervising, training, coaching, and mentoring that sales team or that salesperson. Now, it could be that you actually need to delegate that out because you haven't got time to do that, in which case you've got maybe a sales manager or a sales director to do that, in which case it's your job to, guess what, supervise, train, mentor, and coach that person to do their job as well. So, but on the other hand, none of that sounds very logical because, after all, would you, for example, think to supervise your accountant, or would you coach your engineer? Would you think to train your HR department or mentor your office manager?
Is that because sales is perceived as a soft skill? It's an interpersonal skill, something that we feel we can all do.
I think it's because it is a skill. You're absolutely right. That's the problem. It's not just a black and white 1 and 1 equals 2, as you've been saying earlier. It's a skill, and if you've got a skill, it does need that supervising, training, coaching, mentor, and training. But on the other hand, would it be a good idea, do you think, if you did any team, not just sales, if you were indeed supervising that team and making sure the training was there, and giving them the right coaching and holding them responsible for what it is they're supposed to be doing and giving them some sort of mentoring, would that team, regardless of what that team was, would it operate better?
Well, of course it would do. Yeah.
Right.
Why wouldn't it?
Why, exactly. But we're saying with sales, unfortunately, you don't get the option. You really do have to do those things with those folk. So you've either got to be doing it yourself, and sometimes that might be doing the same thing to you. If you are your own salesperson, guess what? You need to be keeping yourself on check. You know, have you done the right behaviour?
I was going to say, do you need measures and checks? Because a lot of times the only measure or check that comes in is the target.
The target and the results at the end, or hit it or miss it. That's right. By which time it's far, far too late.
Yeah.
So yes, we need to work out, that's what I was saying, we need to know what it is we're supposed to be doing. What's the behaviour that's going to end up in the right result? So that we can track it right back to, okay, how many dials do I need to make? Do I need to make 100 a week? If I do, then I'll do them. Do I need to be doing lots of networking? In which case, how many networking and where is that supposed to be happening? What sort of prospecting should I be doing? How many appointments should I be having? With whom? At what level? How frequently? What should be the end result of each one of those? What's the next step in the sales process? We need to have all of these things very, very clear, tracked, and then we've got some chance of actually hitting the target we've set ourselves. But that, as I say, it could be that we're having to do that to ourselves. If we are, in effect, the salesperson for our own organisation, we've got to do all of those things for ourselves. But if we've actually hired a salesperson, we've got to make sure all of those things are in place.
Sometimes it can become quite a large issue, isn't it? That you're now, particularly in the role of a managing director, you are, or a business owner, you are trying to do all things, aren't you?
Yes.
And I would imagine that most business owners will bring a salesperson on to relieve some of the pressure that they've got there, and they'll feel that they won't have time to do the coaching or the mentoring, because the reason I've employed you is so that I can get on to do something else.
Right. Coaching, how long does coaching take a week, do you think? If you've got one of these, a proper coaching plan in place? The answer is probably about 15 minutes a week.
And that's all it's going to be?
Probably. So seriously, I mean, to keep people on track and supervised and coached and mentored doesn't necessarily take time. We need to know what it is we're doing and how to do it, and then holding those folk responsible to what it is we've actually agreed.
Which kind of leads us on to accountability, doesn't it? I mean, that's really something else. A lot of people feel that it's not their business. So when it comes to accountability, they are driven by different things. A business is looking for the sales, of course, but in your particular instance, the salesperson, how do you make them accountable for the success that they get?
Okay, well, we've got to hold them, therefore, accountable to the behaviour that they're exhibiting. You can't. You're right. You can't legislate for the results they're going to get. You can't say, well, how come you're not getting those results? Because it could be all sorts of reasons. It could be the client's delayed, or something's happening in the economy. There's loads and loads and loads of reasons why a particular deal is perhaps slipped from one quarter to the next. But on the other hand, we can hold them accountable to agreed behaviour. That we can certainly hold them accountable to.
What about when it comes to the way people, it's understanding as well the sales process to a certain extent, isn't it? The owner of a business, what they're going to be doing, they're going to be, how do they judge, how do they know, how do they make the salesperson accountable? For instance, somebody could come in and they could say, well, I've done all this on social media, I've used social media to grow the business, or whatever. Is there not a danger that you end up being the mechanic and the oily rag, so that you're doing all the work and the salesperson is just taking the benefits of the sales that you create?
I'm not entirely understanding. How do you mean?
Come on, Paul. Yes, you do. What I'm saying is, for instance, if you are mentoring,
right, and
you're training,
right,
and you're doing all those things, is there not a danger that you end up just doing the job anyway?
Oh, I see. Well, no, I see. I know what you mean now. No, what I'm saying is that if you're going to okay, how to put it? If a team is not performing well, like say a football team, who is it that you look at? Who's the first person you look at?
It's going to be the trainer, isn't it?
Trainer or the manager, right. If the school is not performing, what's the first person you look at? It's the headmaster or headmistress. It doesn't matter what team you're talking about, it's going to be the person who is supposed to be managing that team that has to be looked at first. So that's what I'm saying. We need to make sure that the management is in place. So if the team isn't performing, it could be, well, as I say, so far, it's either we've got the wrong person, or they're not doing what it is, they don't know what they're supposed to be doing, or they're not actually knowing how to do that, or they haven't got the right management in place. And the management is supervise, train, coach, mentor.
Are we very quick, do you think, at blaming the salesperson as opposed to the management of the salesperson?
I'm saying it's got to be a partnership. I mean, because after all, don't forget, we could still be talking about the owner-manager actually doing all that to himself. Yeah, so I'm not pointing fingers in any particular direction, other than to say, hang on a second. You know, if the sales team is not performing, we've got to take a little bit of responsibility as to.
Because after all, it is your sales team.
That's exactly the point. It's your sales team. I mean, it's a bit like if you've got a car. Right, and it's a bit on its last legs. Do you blame the garage for not looking after it? But if you've done the right maintenance and you've got the right people looking after it, and so on, you know, then and the car still isn't working well, you either got to admit you've got a car that's not working very well and are not going to, or you're going to have to replace it, one or the other. But it's your car. You can't blame the car. It's your responsibility. You got yourself into that position with your car. It's your responsibility. It's your car. It's your sales team. You got yourself in this position. It's your team.
Maybe what you need to be looking at is an MOT for your sales team then.
I think that's exactly what we at Sandler offer, an MOT for your sales team. That's it.
Listen, if you want to find out more about Paul, we've still got some more to come from Paul, but you can go to his website at West M25. It's Sandler Training, and you can have a look at this here. Tired of up and down sales? Can we have a quick look at the screen? There we are. Do you want predictable, consistent results every quarter, every month, every day? You need a trainer who can also be a trusted advisor, partner and consultant. All the reasons why you should be talking to Paul, but this gives you a bit of an insight into what Sandler is all about, what their training techniques and what Sandler certification could mean to your sales team. If you're not supporting, this sounds like a pitch, it's not meant to be, but if you're not supporting your sales team at the moment, maybe talking to the likes of Paul would be a good way to actually give you the information they require. Now, I understand there's a question that we've had. So then, one of the questions that people have, now this is a quickie for you, CRMs, how should they be used when it comes to doing sales? customer relationship managers, we seem to advocate responsibility a lot of the time to technology. We are looking to automate sales. We sometimes look at social media as a way to do a soft sell. We look at CRM systems to manage our clients, our customers. How should we be using the likes of CRM systems within our sales process? Or is it just technology for the sake of technology, and really what we should be doing is picking the phone up and calling?
Well, obviously CRMs, particularly with GDPR, I forget what it stands for.
General Data Protection Regulation.
Thank you. I knew I was going to get it wrong, and you would get it right.
Yep.
That, particularly with that approaching in May next year, having a good CRM database is going to be absolutely paramount. We've got to have that. We've got to know where the data is, what we're doing to it, how we're hanging on to it, how we're deleting it, how we're actually handling it. Very, very important. We've got to be able to prove it and have a policy. So for that purpose, I would say a CRM is very, very important. However, if your question is the CRM an integral part of the sales process? Well, yes, it is, in the sense of being able to make sure we know where we are in that sales process. So, for example, if on our CRM system we can actually identify, okay, what is the pain, what is the budget, what is the decision cycle, then we can actually then go back to that and know exactly where we are. If we know what disc style they've got, what kind of personality they've got, and it's all there on the system, that's absolutely great stuff, because it means that anybody with access to that database can pick it up and run with it and know exactly where we are. So for that purpose, yes, absolutely. But does the CRM system in itself take away any of the sale itself? I don't think so, no. I mean, it really does come down to picking up the phone or at least having an appointment with somebody and finding out what it is that they really, really need help with and seeing if we can solve that particular problem.
There you go, Ralston. Hope that answers the question for you. It's not down to the technology, it's actually still down to the people. You're watching Business Connections Live. My guest on today's show is Paul Glynn from Sandler West M25. Now, if you find the programmes useful and informative, please do go to our website at businessconnectionslive.com. We are inviting people, if you'd like to become a Patreon of our little program that we've got here. The whole idea is to grow the channel, give you more information that you need on an ongoing basis. They give us the opportunity as well to maybe put different programs together that are going to be more viable for you. Now, one of the ways you can do it, as it says, by going to our website. The website is businessconnectionslive.com. Go and run that, VT. Just run it, would you? There we go. Now you're looking for the orange tags that are on the screen. When you find one of those, if you click on that, that will take you to our Patreon page, and it invites you to support the channel. Now, what we've done with this is that we have said, okay, if you support the channel to a certain extent or to a certain amount, then there'll be rewards that come back. So it's not a one-way traffic, it's two-way traffic. So you could become maybe a founder, Business Connections Live TV Patreon, and you'd be featured on our YouTube page, our Facebook page. We would do all sorts of things, invite you on the program. If you're interested in maybe being involved with the channel, helping us to grow it to be the premier, which it is already, but the premier business information channel on the web in the UK, then why don't you get involved? Simply go along to our website, as I said, find the orange tags on the screen, and you could be helping us grow this channel from where it is today, after what, nearly 3 years, to making it bigger, brighter and better in the future. Do support us here on Patreon for Business Connections Live. Now, another way that you can support us as well, because we're going to do two of these things, is also by telling people how much you enjoyed the programs on iTunes. Thousands of you are downloading the programs on iTunes. There are times I go on and I look and I go, crikey, thousands of people have downloaded that particular program. Thousands have downloaded this program. It's really, there's no rhyme or reason. Some programs fly and some programs will just sit there in the hundreds, but others will have thousands of downloads. Now, what would be great if you download our program regularly, if you're listening to this or maybe watching this on your smartphone, your tablet or whatever at the moment, when you're finished watching it, tell us what you thought. It's dead easy to do that. All you got to do is go into iTunes, find the tab that's on iTunes like this, click on the view in iTunes, that'll take you to this page, and you'll see there's a tab up there that says ratings and reviews. Click on that, and then that'll take you down to write a review. Say something like, Paul Glynn, great information, really enjoyed the show. Give him 5 stars, and then what will happen when somebody else watches one of our other podcasts or one of our other programs, iTunes will then recommend this program to them. So it just grows the viewer site. If you want to find out more details about that, why don't you go to the website? Dead easy. To businessconnectionslive.com. Go along to the website. And don't forget, if you want to get in contact with us, I'll give you the email address and the telephone number. The email address is studio@businessconnectionslive.com. And if you'd like to talk to either myself or Linda Bazant, then the telephone number is 01 784 256 777. You're watching Business Connections Live. That's a real mouthful, that lot there, isn't it? But there we go. That's the housekeeping all done. My guest of today's show is Paul Glynn from Sandler West M25. We're discussing on how to get your sales team to perform. If you're sat there and you're thinking, what's the biggest resistance you get when you go in and you go, here's how you do it? Do people sort of look at you and go, yeah, I can see the theory, but putting it into practice is going to be difficult? Do they do that?
Yeah, it's quite often. So I think that's the reason why we take people step by step. We don't say, look, let's spend ages and ages looking at some stuff and hopefully they'll pick it up, because you're quite right. It does take some getting your head around. You've already said how some of what we've been talking about so far today has been very obvious and logical as soon as you say it, but at the same time it's completely contrary, it's completely counterintuitive to what it is that people are doing currently. And then to figure out, well, will it work in my world? I mean, it's a bit of a leap sometimes. So you are right. So we have to hold people's hands very, very gently and say, okay, fine, okay, let's just work this out bit by bit. Is it going to make a difference to your world?
What is the most painful bit then of implementing a system like the Sandler system for the sales team? What's the resistance you see there from the actual salesmen and women? They obviously feel that they're good at what they do already, don't they?
Yeah,
so is there an issue with pride and process?
Yeah, I think it's mainly the idea that they're going to have to put aside their goodie bag, their presentation, and not necessarily bring it out until much, much later on in the process. That's the biggest issue, when they realise that, hang on a second, really and truly, people have to qualify to actually even see our stuff. People actually have to qualify for a proposal, which kind of seems like the wrong way around. Surely what we need to do is to get our client, our potential client, to touch something, see something, have something in the post, get something, get a proposal, get some sort of pitch, see something, anything, so they understand that our value and what it is we can do for them. That's what we're supposed to be doing, right? One of my big clients, they were even stop now. They were even actually being targeted on the number of samples they were being sending out to potential clients, because that was felt to be, if there's
interaction.
If we've got to sample stage, then there's a good chance of some sort of something happening. But
there are businesses that work like that, aren't there? There are businesses that will put a value on a no. So if you do 100 calls, then you might get 2 appointments, and therefore they value both the 100 calls as well as the 2 appointments. So it's the negative in what they're doing.
I totally agree with that. If anything, a no is as valuable as a yes. But what I'm saying is that in that no, you shouldn't have actually given them some drawings, some plans, some samples, in the process. You should only been having given it to not the 2, but probably the one that's actually then going to be able to do something with it.
Listen, we're getting very close to the end, and we've ever so slightly overrun, as we always tend to do. Oh my word, we have completely overrun. There's got to be a kind of conclusion to this whole thing. Does that conclusion include a summary of the process that we should go through, do you think?
The summary?
Could you? Yeah, I mean, we normally ask you to look straight down the lens.
We're going to do that.
We're going to do that in a moment, but is there a process that you could just take us through very, very briefly the process as you would see it for the perfect sales call or the perfect sales process?
Yes, absolutely there is for the perfect sales process. Basically for that we're talking about bonding and report, upfront contract, paying, budget decision, fulfillment, post-sale. That's to say, it's that submarine thing that we were talking about a long time back. If we're talking about what is there a perfect formula for getting our sales team to perform, I'd say there is that as well. We need to make sure that they know what it is they're supposed to be doing, know how they're going to do it, and are held properly accountable and properly supported.
So that's the way forward.
I would say so.
Listen, we're going to ask you, as always, please, to look straight down camera number 4. It's the key takeaways.
Cool.
Say who you are, where you're from, and let's just leave them with that core message that they need to remember you by.
Okay.
The airways, Paul, are all yours.
Thank you. I'm Paul Glynn, MD of Sandler M25. The takeaway I want to leave you today is, if your team is not performing, particularly, but not exclusively in sales, it's because it's a combination of either the wrong people are being tasked with a job, they don't know what to do, they don't know how to do it, they're not being properly supported, or they're not being held accountable properly. Unfortunately, there's no way around it. That's your fault. If you want help, maybe you want to check your local Sandler trainer.
Short, sweet, and to the point.
Thank you.
You once said to me as well that purchasers lie always. Is that the right line? What was the
buyers lie all the time.
Buyers lie all the time. I suppose every salesperson, when you're sitting across the table from a prospect, you've got to accept that the person on the other side is playing a game with you, aren't they?
Absolutely right.
And that sometimes can be quite a hard game to play.
Yeah, so it's our job to stop the game.
Stop the game. Listen, thank you very much indeed for being on the program. It's been a pleasure, as always, to have you on the show today. I've really enjoyed having you with us. Is there one last thought that you think that we should give? I know you've just given that, but is there one line, perhaps, that one thing that is going to make a real difference in somebody's life?
I think it's that we've already said. If your sales team isn't performing, that's your fault. That's
your fault. And do you think selling is going to change as we move on in the future? Is it always going to be the same rules, or will we change, will we mature the way we sell things?
I don't know. I think selling at the end of the day is a person-to-person interaction. I don't think that's ever changed. People hate being sold to, so it's our job to just help people buy, and I think that's the maturing process.
Helping people buy. Listen, I hope you've enjoyed today's programme. You can find out more about Paul by going to his website. You find all the details below this particular video at the Business Connections Live website. Paul Glynn from Sandler West M25, a fascinating programme discussing how to get your sales team to perform better, if at all. Thank you very much indeed for joining with us today. I hope you've enjoyed today's program. It's been a real cracker, hasn't it? And don't forget, we do it all again next Monday at 12 noon. Who we got lined up over the next couple of weeks? Philip Cox-Hyde is going to be on the program on next week's program. We're going to be talking about mindfulness. Also coming up, we've got the customer lifeguard. He's going to be joining us as well. That's Jerry Brown. He's going to be with us. And don't forget, if you'd like to find out more about Business Connections Live, or if you'd like to sponsor us, or you'd like to leave a fabulous review, then why don't you just simply go along to our iTunes? I can fill for as long as you want, but why don't we roll those credits and get the heck out of here? Listen, thank you very much indeed for joining us today. Once again, my thanks to Paul Glynn from Sandler West M25. Until we do it again next week, have yourself a great week and get out there, do some successful selling. Bye for now. Bye-bye.